Hi there. In this video, I'll be walking you through how I built this daily crypto rates Chrome extension. Basically, I'll be talking about the technical decisions that I made and my approach to actually building this application. My name is Aremu Smog and welcome to Webboss YouTube channel. If it's your first time on the channel, kindly subscribe. Please do like and of course, drop your comment in the comment section. Let's get into it. So I'm going to start from the infrastructure side of things, which is basically like hosting the backend of the application. And for hosting, I decided to go with Render. And the reason for that is because it supports all the services that I need out of the box. So for example, I'm able to easily set up a Postgres SQL database. I'm able to set up cron job, and I'm also able to create a web service directly on Render. And all of these guys are able to like talk to each other very seamlessly and effectively. On the back end of this application, I'm using Ruby on Rails, like you can see here. And of course, on the front end, it's just basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like a caveman that I am. So yeah, that's basically what's happening on the infrastructure in code side of things. Now, let's look at the code. On the code side, I basically just have a repository which contains this apps folder, and the apps folder contains the Chrome extension and the Rails backend. And on the backend, basically two things are happening. I'm adding a new item to my daily crypto rates table, and I'm providing a way for the user to be, or the front end to be able to retrieve the latest item from the crypto rates table. For adding new items to the crypto rates table, I basically just set up a rake task. And the reason for that is because I want the process to be automated in that I don't want to every time or want the user to hit the endpoint to generate the daily crypto rate. I want a cron job to run, say, midday and every midnight in order to get the latest daily crypto rate. So yeah, so that's the reason why I went with a rake task. In fact, if you take a look at the cron job that I have over here, and I come over to settings, you will see here that the cron job runs every 12 hours, which is midnight and midday. And the command that is being run is rake crypto rate new. And that's essentially what is happening. And for all of this that is happening itself, so I'm connecting to an API to fetch the crypto rate, which is the Quidax API. So yeah, so you can just use something like Faraday or NetHTTP to access the endpoint if you go check out the documentation. However, I built a Ruby gem for the Quidax API, which is basically a wrapper for the Quidax API. So that's what I decided to use here. And it's fairly simple what I'm doing. Just get the Quidax secret from the environment and pass it to a new Quidax object. Now, if I have a new Quidax object, I can use the Quidax market objects and use the get all tickers method, pass the Quidax object to that, and I expect that that will fetch all my tickers for me. And when I have the tickers, I want to be able to transform it in the format that my front end is going to understand. That's why I have this transform market tickers method over here, right? And the ticker method, basically what it's just doing is just making sure that each coin or each token is basically a key, and it's basically the key of an hash, and the last price is the value. So you can take a look at this method. I can also provide a link to this repo so that you can look at the code base and probably like mess around with things on your hand. So yeah, so that's basically all that is happening over there. And this empty lines is basically a custom method that prints empty lines in the terminal, especially for me to check the logs, right? And once we've gotten our USDT prices, basically I create a new entry in the database, and of course we check if it was successfully saved before we print to the user that new crypto rates were saved. If there's any error, we catch that error and we put something in the console. If I come back to the terminal and I go over to the logs and I check the logs in the past 24 hours, for example, you can see that this ran at 1 a.m. I am at GMT plus 1. The cron job runs at GMT plus 0 or GMT. So that's why we have 1 a.m. over here. You can see fetch new crypto rate connecting to API, fetch crypto rate, and new crypto rate saved. So yeah, so this ran midday yesterday and midnight today. So that's basically all that is happening here. So the next thing, of course, is being able to retrieve the last item that is in the crypto rate table. So if I come over to my app and I check controllers, you can see that I have a crypto rate controller here, and there's just an index method over here. And all we are doing is getting the last item from the crypto rate. And if there is no item, which is of course fresh application, basically just return a JSON of an empty hash. Otherwise, get the last updated item from the last crypto rate and get the rate, and make sure that you are parsing it as JSON so that we're able to send that to the front end and the front end, we understand the data. Then I construct an hash from that, and I just render the hash as JSON for the front end to be able to catch. And we are able to, then we rescue standard error and put the message from the error. This is very similar to try catch in JavaScript code. Another thing that I'm doing here is called caching or low-level caching in Rails, right? So basically, when someone hits this endpoint, I want to look for a very fast way to return a response to them if nothing has changed in the model. So that's why we have rails.cache.fetch, and you have self and index. So basically it checks if, so basically in this case, if there is no new item in our crypto rate table, this guy continues to give us the same response. So that ensures that we are not bombarding our database with a lot of requests. You can go read more on this in the Ruby on Rails documentation. And yeah, that's basically what's happening on the back end. Now let's talk about the front end. So on the front end, basically this is a Chrome extension, right? And one of the important things that you need in order to create a Chrome extension is a manifest.json file. And this basically contains information about your Chrome extension. By the way, if you don't know how to set up a Chrome extension, e.g. how to debug things locally and install before you push to the Chrome Web Store, there's a video on this channel that I will just link somewhere around here. You can take a look out on how to set up your Chrome extension. So you have your name, description, manifest, and so on and so forth. But the really important thing here is the Chrome URL overrides, which basically tells Chrome that whenever there is a new tab or when the user opens up a new tab in their browser, please override it with index.html, which is basically the file that we have here. And we are using the Chrome storage as well to store some data. So that's why you need to give permission here. And by the time you're uploading to the Chrome Web Store, you'll be asked the reason why you are requiring for permission to be able to access the user's storage. Index.html is just what you are familiar with. Essentially what we just have here is the heading, which is the daily crypto rate. If you come over here, daily crypto rate, then you have the last time it was updated, the first time that you make an API request, because there's nothing in your local storage here yet, or your Chrome storage, you just see fetching data. After that, you begin to see the date that this was last updated. Then you have a table to contain the crypto rate, of course, right? Then you have the credits down here below. Now let's talk about what's happening in JavaScript. So I basically have just 3 JavaScript files. I have the constant.js, which basically contains link to the API and also a link to where the currencies information are being stored. Then I have a bunch of helpers, which are basically things that do not directly interact with the document object model or the DOM. And we have the index.js, which basically does all the interaction with the DOM and does all of the DOM manipulation work and so on and so forth. So yeah, so we have the last updated, which is basically the element containing the date that the cryptocurrencies or the rates were last updated, and we have the crypto rate table body, right? And essentially what we are doing here is that when the window or when the document load, we make a request to get the crypto rate in storage. That's the crypto rate in the Chrome storage. So if you come over to helpers, and I search for get crypto rates. So I kind of used a bit of a convention here where get refers to something that is in the storage, while fetch is for something that is on the server, right? So if, just in case you decide to take a look at the code and you're saying get and fetch and it looks confusing. So get is for something local, fetch is for something on the server. So essentially what we do is define a variable for data, which is going to, of course, is what we are going to serve to the user. Then we check the storage and say, oh, is there crypto rate as a key in the local storage? Yes. We receive a callback of the result and we check here if there is any result. If there is result, then we go ahead and pass the result. Then we log something into the console, helpful in development mode, and we return the data. Of course, we update the data here and we return the data. So that's basically what the local storage is doing. And so if I come over here now, the next thing we do is update the DOM with the crypto info that we've gotten. So essentially what that does again is, so there's a bit of a redundancy here, which I think is actually a good thing. So even though we're already making a check here to see if this has length, we still also want to be sure inside of here that we are making those additional checks essentially. So yeah, in fact, I think I could have created an OT function that basically just that we can use to check if there is data or not, right? Then, so if it has data, then update the inner text, right, to data.last updated, and of course we are formatting the date, and the date formatter basically just take a date, just takes a date string, create a new date instance from it, and we use the to local string method on a date instance, and that basically just gives us this, which is of the form of March 18, 2024, 1:09 p.m. Right. So because the cron job, of course, is going to take some minutes to run, that's why it's not precisely like 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. and so on and so forth. So if it has data, go ahead and update the last updated element and also populate the table with the crypto info and the data.rate. So the crypto info is basically this guy. So I have a currencies.json data here, which basically contains metadata information about each currency. Now, I could get this from the backend. I don't want to make too many network requests in order to get information about the currencies. In fact, while you are building Chrome extensions, especially for things that involves like a new tab, one of the things that is advised is you are not making a lot of heavy network requests, too many network requests. So that's one of the reasons why I'm basically storing these currencies.json. Of course, the downside is that every time that I now have to update this list, then I have to make a submission to the Chrome website. But then, of course, it takes a very short period of time for these things to get approved. In fact, when I submitted the original Chrome extension, it took less than 24 hours for it to go live. So yeah, so I don't see that as a problem right now. If this becomes a problem in the future, what I can just do is probably like have an endpoint where I fetch the currency information, then store the currency information locally, then the fetch will also be faster. So that's basically that. Then, of course, the next thing we want to do is populate the table with the crypto info. So one of the things we want to be sure is that there are crypto prices being passed into this populate table. This is also like another check, right? If there is no crypto prices, then don't go ahead and execute all of this code below and put a warning in the console for the developer to know that there are no crypto prices available. Then one of the things you want to do, or that I decided to do, is to clear the table first before beginning to insert other things. And so basically what we just do is we map through, then from each crypto info, which is basically this guy, this is an array of a hash, right, in more saner programming languages other than JavaScript. Then we have the name, we have the code, then we get the price from the code, because basically what you are getting back from the backend, like I mentioned earlier, is like a key of the cryptocurrency and the last price, right? Then we go ahead and create a new table row element, and we insert this table data in that particular table row, and we append the table row to the crypto rates table, and that's basically it. So so if I come back here, so that's the update done with crypto info. That's basically what we are doing here. So the first thing we do when the window loads is we get some local data in the storage, we update the DOM with it, then we get the crypto rates from server and go ahead and update the DOM with it. So I'm going to go through the fetch crypto rate method as well. So we make a query to the crypto API URL, which of course is this guy over here in constant, right? Then if the query rate.status equals 200. Now, because we are doing caching with Ruby on Rails, like I mentioned the other time, the next time that you make a request to the backend, sometimes it doesn't hand you any value except maybe so let me show you what I mean over here. App, controllers, and crypto rates controller. Now, this caching sometimes doesn't, the first time you make a request, it gives you a value. Then the second time you come, it doesn't give you any value, right? So it just makes sense that you make sure that you are checking that the status is a 200, which means that the server said this is okay, and the server returns some data. Something like 201 or 203 may not necessarily return any data, but the server is also okay with your request, and the server acknowledges your request. So that's why I'm making this add check over here. Then, of course, we get the JSON data out of that. Then we check again, are there any data? If there is data, we don't return that data per se. We don't hand off that data back to the user. What we do is add the data that we got, the new data that we got back from the server, we add it to our Chrome storage. Basically, we update our Chrome storage with it. So if I come over here to EPAS and I check set crypto rates, you see that what we are doing is we get the data, then chrome.storage.local, then we set. And when you set this new value, it basically override. That's totally fine by me. I'm not trying to store like the history of the crypto rates on the user's computer. That's already on the server. So if I need to do like maybe an historical or plot a chart with that. I can basically just get that from the backend, and yeah, and that will work perfectly for me. So let's come back here. So what we do is, if there's a new data, we update our Chrome storage data with that particular data. We set this guy to be that new data. And at the end of the day, when all of this is done, we basically we fetch the data. Since we assume that this guy has now been updated, we fetch the data. And if it was not updated, maybe due to an error, we still fetch the data that is currently in the storage and hand this over back to this guy, which is crypto rate from server. Now, I know the name crypto rate from server is a bit misleading or confusing, but the point was to get the crypto rate back from the server. So yeah, that should work there. We'll go ahead and update the DOM with the crypto info. And that's basically it. Then you upload this to Chrome Web Store, you cross your fingers, and they may approve or may not approve it. Do let me know if you found any form of value in this particular video style or this particular video approach. I basically tried avoid not writing any code, because many times you're writing code and you're trying to like debug during the call, and you just discover that you're wasting a lot of time. If this was fine or this was cool, I probably would try to go through more projects such as this, or probably something even a bit much more technical than this, because I feel like this was like a very small project, but they are just like tiny little decisions that you have to make here and there, just in order to just like make the experience good and better for the user. Cheers, and don't forget to build like a boss.